Good evening and welcome to Mwango Basis on X. Today, we are mainly focusing on filing tax returns, and our intention is to simplify the tax filing process for taxpayers, both individuals and corporates. As you are all aware, the deadline as stipulated in the tax laws is to file our income tax returns by the 30th of June, which is a few days away. That's on Monday. And so today we have speakers who are well versed with the topic from KRA and also from the private sector. And the intention is to break down what filing tax returns entails. We look at some of the common challenges that taxpayers have been facing and how that can be resolved. Then we will also look at the ongoing tax amnesty that is available for taxpayers to take advantage of before the 30th of June deadline. My name is Njau. I am a frequent host of the tax-related spaces here on Mwango Capital, and I'm a tax practitioner. I will allow our speakers to introduce themselves, and we will start with the Deputy Commissioner for Taxpayer Experience at KRA, Patience, then Dr. Gideon, Miriam, and Wycliffe Ombasa, in that order.
Thank you very much and good evening, everyone. My name is Patience Njau. I'm the Deputy Commissioner in charge of Taxpayer Services and Taxpayer Experience. And I'm glad to be here and looking forward to listen and also to have a discussion on all issues and various issues, especially pertaining to this filing season. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I am Dr. Gideon Muhwa, Deputy Commissioner in the Micro and Small Taxpayers, and I'm in charge of compliance, and I'm glad to be in this forum. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Wycliffe Ombasa from Frontline Services, Taxpayer Experience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our speakers, for finding time to join with us this evening. To start off, a question to Madam Patience, in a nutshell, help audience to understand what income tax filing entails. You can give us the legal framework that creates this requirement to file a tax return around this time in June. Patience?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to address. And before I talk about filing, allow me to just highlight by saying that as KRA, we are committed to serving. We are committed to co-creation, which is something that we have been talking about. We have started talking about. And for us to be able to do this, we have been able to reorganize ourselves. And we now have a section that focuses on micro and small taxpayers, which is why we are here, because now structurally we are able to organize ourselves in a way that we can engage more, listen more, and take in that feedback in a more meaningful way so that we are able to co-create with yourselves solutions that would help us achieve what suits our taxpayers better and what indeed serves us as Kenyans better. So in terms of filing of returns, let me start by saying that everybody who holds a PIN number has an obligation to file their returns. So returns filing becomes compulsory the minute you get a PIN number. And this is because when you get a PIN number, you get an obligation, which we call income tax. There are many different obligations that a taxpayer can have, but the most basic of obligations that we have is the income tax obligation. So once you have that income tax obligation, then the law mandates us to ensure that you are filing your returns, and the filing of returns opens from January till 30th of June every year. That is the period within which we invite taxpayers to file their returns. Now, the return filing definitely is something that people have struggled with, partly because they will normally assume that they don't have to file their returns because they're not paying. I would also then like to say that so long as you have a PIN number, you have to file your returns. But I would also like to say that when you file your returns, it does not necessarily mean that you have to pay your taxes until you're within the income tax threshold for earnings that are taxable, which is about 25,000 or something close to that per month. Then you don't have to pay. And that would be employment income or business income. So you ensure that you're able to pay your taxes. And if you have any tax due to pay, if there's no tax due, then there's nothing to pay. And then you would file what we call a nil return.
Thank you, Patience, for that clarification that everybody with a PIN or a personal identification number is required to file returns. I think it's good that for our audience that you get that right. And Patience, you can clarify once again. It happens that I did not make any income during the year. We are talking about 2024. Am I still required to file a tax return?
Yes, if you have a PIN number with that income tax obligation, you need to file your returns. If you did not have any income, then you will submit a nil income and indicate that you did not get any income. The reason we file the returns is primarily to account for the income and the earnings that you get, whether it's employment income or business income. So you file those returns for each of the months. You will then indicate that you have nil to pay and you have no income. Then you just click submit and it will balance off because there's nothing to declare. And normally we have quite a number of students, for example, who have applied for a PIN number because of help obligations. Again, that is all you'd need to indicate that you are having this income because you're a student, and therefore, again, the system will allow you to just proceed and you submit your return.
Thank you for that. I will allow one of our speakers who has joined us late, Ruth Mwiti, to introduce herself and tell us what she does within the tax industry. Ruth, over to you.
Thank you, Joe, and good evening, everyone. My name is Ruth Mwiti. I am a tax consultant by profession. What we do is we help businesses and individuals file their tax return, and if they need any advisory services on tax matters, that's how we help them. Thank you, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Ruth. Moving on to Dr. Gideon, and the question to you is for employees. And this is a question that for tax practitioners, we get a lot from common mwananchi. I am employed. My employer has deducted my pay as you earn on a monthly basis. Why am I still required to file a tax return at the end of the year? Yet KRA has already received my taxes through pay as you earn system. Gideon? We cannot hear Gideon, so I will pass that question to Patience.
For pay as you earn, this is a tax obligation that one is obliged to remit when you are under employment income within the threshold that is allowable for pay as you earn tax. For pay as you earn, you have your employer making the remittances, but we also require the employee to make their returns. The reason for this is to allow for accountability so that you can confirm that indeed this is the pay that I get, and yes, this is the tax that is deducted. So that's why we require you to file. Into the future, as we go into the next financial year, we are looking forward to simplify this for our taxpayers. And from July this coming financial year, we will be rolling over to the simplified PAYE solution that will be asking businesses to use to remit their PAYE. So with that return, then we will have a pre-populated return so that you're not filling in anything. You are just acknowledging and confirming that, yes, this is what I have, and you click submit. You will not be having to do everything from scratch. At a minimum, that's the reason why for now we require an employee to submit their returns.
And what would be the penalty if an employee does not submit their income tax return?
When there is a non-remittance for returns, you have a penalty of 2,000 if you are not able to remit your returns. So that's why we encourage for all our taxpayers to ensure that they file their returns to avoid attracting that penalty, because then the penalty will attract interests.
I have a subsequent question to that. For employees or people under the pay as you earn regime, what document would ordinarily one require to have to be able to comfortably file their return?
For an employee, all you need is your P9 form. You'll be able to make your submissions. We also support employees to file their returns. Again, you could share also the P9s from your institution, or you could ask for on-site support, which we are able to provide with our officers being deployed to support a specific group of people. But the primary document that you need for filing your PAYE is the P9 form.
Thank you for that, Patience. And maybe to speak on to KRA's assistance in terms of helping taxpayers file, what are you doing at this time to ensure that taxpayers who maybe do not have access to internet at their homes or computers can be facilitated to file their income tax returns within the deadline of 30th June? So what measures is KRA putting in place to ensure that they can support these taxpayers?
So for us to be able to support our taxpayers, we've put in place a number of measures. Number one, majority of our taxpayers normally will file nil returns. So to support that, we have been able to make available a platform on eCitizen where you can use the USSD to log into your eCitizen and then file your nil returns, or you can log into the eCitizen portal to file your returns. Within KRA, we are opening for extended hours. We are opening between 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at all our tax offices. And we also have select Huduma centers where we'll be open, including tomorrow and Sunday up to Monday, to ensure that we are able to serve everybody. So the Huduma centers that will be open during the weekend is the GPO Huduma Center here in Nairobi. We have the Mombasa Huduma Center that will be open. We have the Thika Tax Office, Nakuru. Eldoret will also be open. Kisumu, Kisii, and Embu Huduma centers will also be open so that you're able to access KRA services. And that is in addition to our KRA tax offices across the country that will remain open and ready to serve our taxpayers from early in the morning till late in the evening. And I'd also like to say that we also have our contact center that is available to support our taxpayers. I will be able to give you the number for the contact center at the end of this conversation. The contact center again is open from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. and you'll be able to have an agent walk you through how you can file your returns. And also just to retaliate that our services are offered free of charge. So you do not have to incur any cost to file your returns. Our officers in any of our offices will be happy, ready, and willing to serve you to file your returns with us, and those services are free.
Thank you, Patience, for that. And very easy question that I often get as a tax practitioner is, I've forgotten my password, my iTax password, and I am not able to reset. So maybe you can briefly explain to taxpayers how they can be able to reset their iTax password so that from there, we change gears to how to do the actual filing. Wycliffe Mombasa, you can explain to us how taxpayers can change their password to be able to access iPass.
For you to reset your password, one, you need to have either your national ID number or your KRA PIN, and you will go to our iTax page. You log into iTax, itax.kra.go.ke, and they tell you that log in with PIN or ID. If you don't remember your KRA PIN, then you can use your national ID. You will capture your national ID, and then you click continue. Once you click continue, it gives you this where you're supposed to key in your password. Now, down there, you click forgot your password, and then you answer a simple automatic question. Then the new password will be set to your iTax registered email address. Now, you log into your email address, you get the new password. Then now you come to iTax again, and you reset in your password. Alternatively, you can as well log in to KRA services through eCitizen. You just log into eCitizen account using, of course, your credential for eCitizen. Then you go to KRA services. You again are registered there, and then you'll get a one-time password. Just basically when using your own phone, and you'll again be able to access our KRA services through eCitizen.
Thank you, Wycliffe. I think that is clear enough to audience. Switching gears to Ruth, as a tax consultant, often you get calls from taxpayers that they have already filed their return, but they think they made a mistake in filing the return. Some people will tell you, I just realized when I filed my return last year for 2023, I did not claim some reliefs that I'm entitled to. And so I filed my tax return with a tax obligation, which is wrong. So looking at people who have filed their returns erroneously, is there room to make amendments on iTax? And how can they go about that? Ruth?
So it's a very interesting question. But yes, we get those queries every day. Taxpayer has filed a return and they realize they have liability. One, their P9 did not show any liability or the employer had deducted. There are other instances where you will find that a taxpayer has filed but they erroneously omitted something. Or in some instances, we had a case recently that the taxpayer had put in more than they should have done. The iTax system or the Revenue Authority system has a model where you can be able to file an amended return. So in such a case, a recommendation would be for the person who is affected to apply for amendment of the return, give reasons on why they wish their return to be amended. So if, for instance, they forgot to put the reliefs, then they would say that. So there are two possible outcomes if you file an amended return. So if the return shows an increased tax position, then it's usually automatically approved. So if it's an issue of you found that your taxes were less than what should have been, then that is an automatic approval. On the flip side, if it is a return that is showing a reduction in the tax position, then once you file the amended return, you would need to follow up with the Revenue Authority. The team is here to be able to validate your amendment. And once that is done, it is at that point that you would get now the revised position factored on the iTax system or on your ledger. So for a reduction in taxes for items that were not captured, you would need approval. For an increase, you would get it automatically, but there is that avenue of making an amended return where you have made a mistake.
Maybe you can clarify, is there a penalty for amending the return?
Again, it depends on the position or rather the outcome. So if it's a reduction of the tax, then there is no penalty. But if there is an increase in the tax position and you have outstanding taxes that you need to pay, then that will attract some interest and some late payment penalties. Currently, the late payment penalty for late paid taxes is 5% and 1% interest per month. So it depends on what is the outcome of that position.
One other question that is very common is that tax filing or anything tax is a reserve for accountants or people who are in finance. And so that means many people perceive it to be very complex. And starting with just an unemployed person, with just making a resident individual income tax return. Question to Wycliffe. Do we have a simplified way of making or submitting your tax return for these people who are not necessarily accountants? Is there a way that KRA has made it simple? And maybe you can, in summary, try to give us a stepwise flow of how to go about it. Wycliffe?
Simplified ways of filing tax return, especially for those who have employment income only, whereby you use pre-populated information in your iTax profile. You log in to iTax profile. Once you log in, you will go to file returns. Then once you are there, you will select ITR for employment income only. Once you select ITR for employment income only, you will get pre-populated information, whereby then you just verify the information there, whether it tally with what is declared on your P9. And of course, if you have mortgage or you have insurance relief, then you are able to capture those details in a very easy and convenient way. And once you have completed verifying the information captured on iTax, then you submit your tax return on iTax. So that's just one way of filing a return for those who have employment income only. There are those other category who have other business or other source of income. For example, they might have withholding certificates. You will find using an Excel option. You will just go to log into your iTax profile, then you go to return and then file return. Once you're on file return, you will select Excel option. Then you download the Excel. Once you download the Excel, the first thing you do is that you enable macro in your Excel. And once you enable macro in Excel, then now you start populating the details. The first detail that you populate is basic information sheet. We have a sheet for basic information, and this sheet, you capture the detail of your PIN number, the type of return, which is non-original return, And then the period that's to cover, let's say 2024, 1st of January to 31st December. Once you have captured under the basic detail, then the question where it asks you, under basically row 7, it asks you, do you have any other income apart from employment income? You will select yes, that question. And once you have selected yes, additional sheets will populate. These sheets include profit and loss accounts, as well as balance sheet. So we'll start with the first sheet, which is basically sheet B, where you declare now the detail of the income that you receive, either from business, from agriculture, from interest, and any other source of income, including commissions. Then you again capture the corresponding expenses that were incurred in generating that particular income. Still, all of those are captured in sheet B, which is basically profit and loss accounts. Once you've captured that, then now we go to balance sheets. In the balance sheets, you then capture the detail of your assets and, of course, all the detail of your liabilities. So once you've captured, you've populated those two sheets, then you will go to the last sheet, which is tax computation. And again, here you will see taxes have already been computed. So basically what you do is you verify the amount of tax that has populated. It should either be 0 or a negative or a positive. A positive means your tax that you need to pay to KRA. To get a negative figure, it means you have a refund that you're supposed to receive from KRA. And of course, it should be a 0. The reason why it should be a 0 is because for those who are in business and they expected to make tax liability of about 40,000 and above, they are required to pay that tax on installment basis. So you find they already paid that particular taxes on 4 equal installments basis. So they just capture the detail of the tax that they have already paid under the sheet for installments. Thereafter, in the last sheet, they just then validates. And once they validate, the document will be synced, which then will be saved in my documents. So you'll go back to now its profile, and then you upload now the zip file to complete the filing process.
Thank you, Wycliffe, for that. I know it's a bit detailed, but that's why we say the KRA are available to do facilitation in case a taxpayer need additional support. They are able to seek that from the tax stations nearest them, even over the weekend. Switching gears a bit, and we'll go back to Ruth, and we will look at filing returns for corporates, that is non-individuals. What documents do I need to have to file my tax return for my business, for my small business, assuming? Do I need to already have my financial statement audited and signed to be able to proceed do the filing? And what information will I be required to fill in the tax return? Ruth?
Thank you, Joe, once again for that question. When you talk about non-individuals, you're referring to companies and probably partnerships or other formally registered form of businesses. One, the question is, has the business been in business? If it has not in business, the first outcome would be there has not been any business. So if the business has not had any business, then there is the option of filing a nil return, because basically you're saying I did nothing, and that is allowed when you're not doing any business. So that's the first option. If then this non-individual, this company had been doing business, then the expectation is that this business should be able to report the income that it earned for that period. That is, for instance, if you're looking at 2024, January to December, you would need to have a schedule of all the income that you earned for that period. So then the next thing that you would need to have is, what are your expenses? Remember, you pay taxes on profit. You don't pay taxes on gross income unless it's other types of taxes like the turnover tax or the rental tax, which we are not handling for today's session. We're handling income tax. So if your business is a profitable business, then you need your income and your expenses. And after you do your income and your expenses, then you get what is called a profit. So you pay the tax on profit. So what do you need? What documents do you need? you need to have your income, invoices that you issued to your customers or receipts that you issued to your customers for the entire period. And then the next thing that you need, which is very important, is the purchases and all the expenses. For instance, if you're dealing in supply of products, do you have the invoices from suppliers? Do you have the records to show that you paid this supplier? So you need to have a schedule to be able to support your expenses and your income. And then you also need to be able to do what we call a simple balance sheet, showing what are your assets, if you have any loans, if you have any assets that you have that are used for that business, then you need to have. So it is recommended in such a business setup to have somebody who has some experience or an accountant to do for you some books of accounts, because if you are not able to explain some of the incomes or some of the expenses, then they can raise questions in future. You also need to be able to verify that your income, the income that you are reporting, is what is appearing in your bank statements, because some of the mistakes that the taxpayers will do, they will do the returns in a hurry towards the deadline. Like now today, there's somebody who will call Joe or Ruth and say, please file my return, but you have no record. So when it comes to an audit, then you're asked, what is the basis of this income? You don't have. What is the basis of these expenses? You don't have. Sometimes you will even find taxpayers who have even not claimed all their expenses. So we recommend that this should be an ongoing process from January to December, and this period should be just filing. You put your records in order, because those records are the ones that will help you in filing your return for the subsequent year. And then the most important thing, if you're saying that you have any tax payable, then you need to know the deadlines, which is you need to pay installment taxes in 4 installments per year. The balance of tax is payable by 30th of April. So it's a process, but the most important, even beyond audited financial statements, the most important is to have your records in order, because that is what will be able to support you in case of an audit.
That is helpful for people in business who are not necessarily accountants or in finance. At the bare minimum, you need to have kept records across the year. And when we talk about records in accounting, we talking about your income and any expenses that you have incurred to earn that income for the business. Now, with that, if you shared that, we call that incomplete records in accounting. Your accountant or tax consultant can be able to construct an income statement and a balance sheet, which will be critical in filing of your income tax return. One very important question, very basic question that I've received from the audience, and I will throw this to Patience, is a taxpayer says, I am not able to recover my PIN registered email, or I don't have access to the email that my iTax notifications go to. And this could be for many reasons. Maybe you registered your PIN at a cyber cafe and the cyber guy used their own email, and so you don't have access to that email, or you have lost access to that email. What is the process that a taxpayer can do to change the registered email or be able to access iTax notifications? Patience?
For a taxpayer to be able to access their email address, if they can't see it, they can call us directly so that we are able to reset for them. The challenge here comes because most of the people have an email address specifically just for KRA. So by the time you come back in a year later, then you're not able to access that email address because you cannot remember it, and that's where we are sending the OTP to you. So if you need to reset your PIN number, you can call us on our contact center lines, or you can visit any of our offices. Our contact center number is 020-499-9999, 020-499-9999, or 0711 099 999, 0711 099999. So you can call us, and also you can create an email that you can access and visit any of our offices, including Huduma centers, to change the email address. Or you could also send us an email to our contact center, or even reach us at KRA Care handle on X.
I think for the sake of the audience, you can just type the contact center numbers on the chat box for future reference.
Okay.
But also of importance is that we need to recognize that we have many Gen Zs who are already registered taxpayers, and for them, their primary source of information is social media. What avenues can a taxpayer use via social media, that is Facebook, X, or Telegram, or whichever other media, to be able to reset their registered email or to be able to receive iTax notifications?
They can reach us on the Taxpayer Services Twitter handle. They can also reach us on KRA Care on Twitter. Which other one have you asked for that is not an email?
I mentioned Telegram. I also did not mention TikTok. So maybe you can mention, when contacting KRA on these social media platforms, what identification documents would one necessarily need to verify that I am Mr. Joe Moniki and I need to reset my email address?
The primary document that we use to verify will be your ID, national ID, and we will be able to reset it for you. We also are available on our Facebook page. Again, if you have a query, you can send us a direct message and we'll be able to respond, or you can talk to us there and we will DM you for safety, so that then you can have some confidentiality and we will do the password resets.
Miriam, a very simple question for you. It's a question from people who do freelance businesses that involves part-time consultation, and they happen to get withholding tax returns. I have not registered a company per se, so I'm still using my personal KRA PIN. Will I be required to file my tax return as a business or as an employee, for lack of a better word? Miriam?
All people earning any taxable income are supposed to file their return. And you can file your returns either as a company, which is a company PIN starts with P, or as an individual whose PIN start with A. So even when you're doing consultancy, you're not an employee, but you're earning taxable income. When you look at the return, there are different sources of income. One of them can be business, the other can be consultancy, there can be agricultural income. There are several sources of income. So when you're doing consultancy, that is another source of income, and you're required to do your individual return at the end of the year and declare all the incomes that you earned through your consultancy, and then go ahead, and if there are any expenses that you incurred, you claim them. Then the system will be able to compute to you if there is any amount that you should pay that is remaining, or there is any refund that is due to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. And the question we get as tax practitioners from many of these people who are doing freelance is that, yes, I have had a PIN and I have earned some income from my side hustles as a consultant, but I have not filed my tax returns over the last 5 years. So for these people who have not filed their tax returns over the years, how can they catch up and be able to avoid paying penalties? Say, I registered my PIN in 2019 and I have earned some income across the years. I have never filed. Is there an avenue to catch up and be able to avoid penalties?
Currently, I would like to just mention about the program that we are running, Tax Amnesty. And in this program of Tax Amnesty, we are encouraging taxpayers who have not been filing their returns to do, because once you file your return, and one of them is you declare incomes that were not previously declared. So if you come forward and declare those incomes in your return and pay the principal taxes before end of this month, that is 30th of June, you will get all the previous interest and penalties that you would have incurred. You will have them vacated, that is amnestied. So we're encouraging taxpayers to come forth, go back to their returns, file for the past periods, and then after you file, if there is a payable taxes, go forth and pay the principal amount, and then you'll get amnesty on the interest and penalties that would have accrued for those periods. And we are also encouraging you note there are others who maybe were audited. You find you were audited for the last period, but maybe the audit was concluded last year or this year. We are also encouraging those ones who underdeclared to come forth and pay the principal amount so that they can take advantage of the tax amnesty.
Thank you, Miriam, for introducing the subject on tax amnesty. We will put a pause on amnesty at that because I would want us to simplify it further. But a subsequent question to that for you, Miriam, is for people who are employed and during the year 2024, they work for multiple employers. How are they supposed to do the filing? Where are they supposed to get the information from?
When an employee is employed or working for several employers, the employers are supposed to give the employee the P9. Each of the employers should give the employee a P9. So when you go to file your return, the place you're supposed to declare the employer, you will put the first employer and declare the incomes from the first employer. Then you go, there's a portion that opens up. You can capture as many employers as possible as long as you were employed by those employers. And after you capture, the system will compute because when you were employed by these employers, when they deduct you, the credits would come to your ledger. So immediately you file your return, the system will compute and find whether you're in a payable position or a refund position.
We are switching gears back to Patience. And the question for you is, I am a Kenyan, but I've been working in the US, or I was working in the US for the year 2024. That means I was not resident in Kenya. However, I visited Kenya once or twice to check on my family back at home. How am I required to file my income tax return, considering that I earned income outside Kenya in the US and my taxes were paid in the US? Patience?
I think for that question, the best person who can guide the team on here would be Ombasa. The question touches on residencies and foreign income.
We can park that question for now, Madam Patience.
Okay.
So the other question for you, Madam Patience, is would like to look at the awareness that KRA is doing in terms of making taxpayers aware of their obligations, in terms of filing. Where can taxpayers find information on this awareness or education or trainings or as a guided approach in terms of filing their return?
We have available videos that demo how to make your returns, whether it's for employment or business income. We also have availability on our social media handles where we are able to address the various questions that taxpayers would have. And again, we can be accessible to them. We are also available for on-site support and dedicated services, so to speak. Again, for this, any institution that is interested that would want support in this regard, they can always get in touch with us and reach out to us for us to give them that dedicated support where we come in and do tax education to your group of maybe business people or business associates, support in filing their returns. We also have KRA TV that has a lot of information on KRA and it's available on YouTube. You can follow that channel so that you're able to access us and you will find us. And also in each of those spaces, you're always welcome to give us your comments and we shall respond to you.
I think towards the end of these spaces, if possible, you can paste a link with the simplified tax return on a step-by-step process in the chat box so that the audience will be able to follow through and be able to comfortably file their returns. There was a question for Ombasa on residency. So there are Kenyans who have not been a resident in Kenya or have relocated. They have earned their income outside Kenya, which was taxed in those jurisdictions. First question is, are they still supposed to file their tax return? And how are they supposed to file this return considering that their tax was paid outside Kenya? Obasa?
First, you start by defining residency because I see that terminology has popped out. There are conditions that are supposed to be met for one to be defined as either resident or non-resident. Maybe begin with residency. You are a resident in Kenya if you have a permanent residency in Kenya. That is maybe you have a home, you have an office, or you have somewhere that you are controlling, and you are in Kenya for any particular period outside. The second one is that you have been in Kenya for a period of 3 years, for days of a total of 122 in the last 3 years, or you are in Kenya for the year under consideration, another previous year for an average of about 181 days if you are a resident, and if you are a non-Kenyan. So those are the 3 conditions that you have to meet for you to become resident. Now, assuming you are a Kenyan, you went abroad, and that year under consideration, you have not stepped in Kenya for any particular period of time. So if you have not stepped in Kenya, then you'll now be considered as a non-resident, and you will file your taxes as non-resident. Now, for purpose of, let's say, employment income, if you read Section 5, worldwide employment income is taxable, both in the country where it was earned and as well as Kenya. Now, you will require to file your return and declare your taxes. And then, of course, you'll declare the income that you received in the foreign country. But again, they don't allow you to claim all the deduction, all the taxes that you paid in the country where you gain that particular income. Country where we have double tax agreements, of course, where double tax agreements are, that means you just pay particular tax in one country. For example, in France, we have a double tax agreement with France. That means the tax you pay in France will be acceptable here in Kenya. Just declare the detail of double tax agreement when you are filing in your return. And when you go to file your return using Excel and basic information, you will see where we have a question, do you have foreign income? If you click yes to that particular question, additional sheet will populate where then you declare the detail of double tax agreements if there is. So any person who has a KRA PIN, whether you are in the country or you are outside the country, you are required to file your tax return every year. And if you don't have any other income, even where you are in abroad, then you can file return. But if you have an income, you need to declare that particular income and again declare the detail of the tax that you paid in the foreign country, as well as take advantage of the double tax agreements that we have, so that you are not taxed twice. So yes, to that question, each and every person file their return, whether you are in the country or you are outside the country. And the good thing is that our iTax is available online wherever across any part of this world. You can just log in to iTax from wherever you are, whether you are in UK, USA, wherever you are online, and be able to file your return. And of course, we are also available to assist those who are taxpayers in diaspora through our contact center. If they send us an email, we are able to provide them assistance. But of course, most importantly, we also do our online session, just training those people how to do their taxes, how to file their return, how to declare the foreign income, and even how to declare various assets that are in various jurisdictions.
A subsequent question to that is, I am a taxpayer, I am a Kenyan, I am currently residing in South Africa, in UK, in the US, in Nigeria. I don't know whether wherever I'm residing at, Kenya has a double tax agreement with that particular country. The question is, are these people in diaspora only able to take tax credits from countries where we have double tax agreements with, or provided that I am an individual, I'm able to take a credit from whichever country where my tax has been paid at?
Ideally, each and every person is required to take advantage of those credits and, of course, claim any credit that we have incurred. The only difference between where we have a double tax agreement and where we don't have is that where we don't have a double tax agreement, that tax that was paid is then treated as an expense, while the expense was incurred by generating that particular income. But where we have a double tax agreement, it means that the taxes that you paid there, you are not going to pay any extra tax, or the rate of tax that was used, as we just verify that we just paid tax once. So basically, the difference is the treatment of that tax that was paid, but all of them should declare the detail of taxes that we paid. Now, we have an office that provides issues what we call resident certificates. So we advise every Kenyan, if you are stuck somewhere about taxes, then you just email us a request for tax residency certificate. And of course, the country that we have a double tax settlements in, they are available online, as well as if you go to our website, then you will see a list of countries where which Kenya sent us into a double tax agreement with. So basically they are available, but we also assist by providing tax residency certificates.
For the people in diaspora, I hope that question is clarified. I've seen many questions trickling in, and this tells us that there is a lot of interest in taxpayers to understand a lot in terms of their obligations, filing their returns, and how to go about it. Before we change gears, I want us to maybe just elaborate what penalties are there, both to individual taxpayers and to the corporates, if they have not filed their returns over the years. And that question will go to Ruth Miti.
The penalties for late filing or non-filing. So for individuals, if you have the APIN, the penalty for non-filing is 2,000 shillings. And for companies, the penalty is 20,000. Now, it also depends. If you have any unpaid taxes, then the late filing penalty could go up because it's the higher of 5% of the tax due for that period, or 20,000, whichever is higher. So assuming you file a late return, and when filing, you also had taxes to pay for that year. So the system will compare between the 20,000 for companies or the PPINs and the 5%, which is higher. So that is what the system will charge you. Same for individuals. So it is very important for taxpayers to ensure that they file their returns on time. There are those who sometimes even forget their PIN numbers, or they don't know whether they have PIN numbers. I know we will also be discussing the amnesty here. It is a very good opportunity. You take the 2 or 3 days left to check your records, because the 20,000 is a bit hefty. And if you have not filed, for instance, for the last 5 years, that translates to 100,000. It is very important, but those are the penalties. 2,000 for individuals with the APIN and 20,000 for each period that is unfiled. So if you have not filed for the last 5 years, because you assumed probably the P9 is sufficient, then that is 10,000. If you're an individual, if you're a company, that is 100,000. So it's a bit hefty, and that's what is levied under the law and in the income tax, and also the system. That is what is levied.
Allow me to introduce one other speaker from the Revenue Authority. We have Esther Mudoni with us. Esther, you will introduce yourself, and then you can weigh in on the earlier question on foreign income and obligations for Kenyans in diaspora. Esther?
Thank you very much, Joe. My name is Esther Wahome. Mudoni is my middle name. I'm the Deputy Commissioner in charge of tax expansion. I've been listening in. My colleague, I think, has quite comprehensively addressed the issue of foreigner. The only probably small clarification I wanted to make is that as long as you're a Kenyan citizen, whichever country you work in, regardless of whether we have a double tax treaty with that country, then you can claim the tax credit or the taxes that you paid. And I'm saying this because of the question you asked about the US. We currently don't have a double taxation agreement with the US. But if our Kenyan citizens who are in the US have paid tax in the US, then when you're filing your return, you can claim the tax credit from the US. So that is regardless of the double tax agreement. But here the caveat is that you're a Kenyan citizen. That's what the law provides. So I think that clarification is critical. But otherwise, the other details that we've had are accurate, and he covered it comprehensively.
Thank you, Esther, for that clarification. And we'll be coming back to you. Another question when we look at the element of the tax amnesty. But for now, we go back to Patience. And the question to you, Patience, is that from yesterday, many Kenyans were surprised to receive text messages from Kenya Revenue Authority about principal taxes owed from as far back as possible. You can clarify what was the intention of that communication? Or should the taxpayers respond or react to that?
The reason for that message is, number one, to just let taxpayers know the specific amount of taxes that they owe, so that it's very clear and straightforward without them having to second guess what we are trying to tell them. The other thing is, when they receive that message, it's because we have it on our ledger that there is an amount that is owing to KRA. In a number of instances, maybe it could be a ledger reconciliation issue. So, for example, maybe they need to reconcile their payaways, or maybe there was transitions in employment, among other things. So the best thing that they can do is reach us on those numbers that we provided there, or on our social media handles, and we'll be able to address it. I agree that this would have come a bit earlier. However, we are still in the process of evolving. So we'll be able to address this going forward as a way of working, so that we're able to have more concise and specific discussions, which is what we wanted to start also with that messaging, and for taxpayers to be able to engage with us more conclusively as we go into the future. In the next financial year, we are looking forward to be able to resolve those sort of queries even on SMS. When you receive that message, then you can respond to it, and we believe that will even make our service a lot better, simpler, and faster for our taxpayers.
Thank you, Patience, for that clarification. My personal feelings about this message, it was not timely. I would wish that such messages would come earlier than towards the deadline. Also, considering that this week we have had public unrest, so it would put a lot of pressure on the Revenue Authority trying to get back to taxpayers with the SMSs on the very last minute. I hope the message is home. I think we can do better next year, but for the taxpayers and our audience, is that this was not meant to create panic, but rather to explain or to communicate to you the obligations that are pending or are outstanding based on your PIN. And back to Esther, and there is a question that I've seen from our audience. Last year, 2024, there were a number of changes in terms of what we call tax reliefs and tax deductions. And this relates to affordable housing levy. We also had social health insurance fund, and we also had a change relating to insurance reliefs. Question is, are taxpayers still required to declare these reliefs and deductions when making their 2024 tax return? And if yes, how are they supposed to go about it?
I think you've received quite a number of inquiries on that end. And I think the challenge for the relief that were introduced in tax laws amendment late last year was that they came toward the end of the financial year, or rather end of the calendar year. So what we've actually done, Joe, is that if you look at the amended P9, and I would want to encourage taxpayers, because I've actually received a number of inquiries on the P9 that we are using. It is critical for taxpayers to use the right P9. So the right P9 actually have clear guidance on how you should be able to claim relief that were introduced toward the end of financial year. If you actually just do a quick boo-boo, and I would encourage taxpayers to do that, step-by-step guide on filing your 2024 return, you'll also be able to see the step-by-steps. So the reason why I'm saying this is that it's a bit elaborate and technical, but the key thing to note is that the law introduced a claiming social health insurance the levy and also the housing levy as a full expense. So when you're filing your return, then you'll claim the December amount because they were effective 27th of December. So we actually issued a public notice around or just early January to clarify to taxpayers that employers, you can grant this release to your employees for the December payslip. But now when the employee is filing, you need to be very keen because the social health insurance and the housing levy, they became deductible expenses against your employment income, meaning that you can then be able to get the entire amount deducted against your taxable income. Essentially, you're getting a 30% credit of your contribution. But Joe, there's a clear step-by-step guide in our website that taxpayers can then interrogate more on this, and they'll be able to be guided on how to claim that, because there's an intertwine between NHIF, because NHIF was dropped and then we came to social health insurance. So it will be good that this can be checked. But I think, Joe, through patience, we can also share with you that to share with your listeners the step-by-step guide.
I think it would be important to share that a link to that stepwise process of filing on the chat box so that the audience are able to interact with that and be able to simplify their tax filing process. But before we let you go, Esther, you mentioned some very technical terms in your response. One is the deduction and another one is relief. You can briefly explain to us what a deduction is and what a relief is and how different in terms of tax they applied. Esther.
In simple terms, a tax deduction, Joe, is an expense you get to claim against your taxable income. So assuming Joe is earning a salary of 100,000, and we are saying that there is a tax deductible expense, like now the shift and AHL, then what you do is that you take that whole expense and deduct it from the 100,000. So that is what we call a tax deductible expense. So what happens is that assuming the two are 10,000 in total and you have a gross income of 100,000, then it means you will be taxed on 90,000, which is 100,000 minus 10,000, which is the deductible expense. A relief, which is mainly what we have for like life insurance or personal relief, is you get a credit against your tax payable. So when we determine that your taxable income is 90 and we compute tax, say just for simplicity's sake at 30%, then a relief, you claim it against the tax, not against taxable income. So that's the simplest way, Joe, I can explain it.
Thank you, Esther. I believe we have addressed most of the questions regarding filing of returns, and so I want us to look at the tax amnesty. Miriam, you can briefly explain to us what tax amnesty is, assuming that we have a layman, people who are not into accounting, finance, or tax, who have joined together with us. So briefly explain to them what is a tax amnesty and what are the benefits of participating in the current amnesty program.
In brief, the tax amnesty is forgiveness. But the current tax amnesty that we are running, the forgiveness is on interest, penalties, and fines. And for you to get this amnesty, the interest, penalties, and fines should have been incurred for periods up to 31st December 2023, going all the way back. So for any taxpayer who might have accrued interest, penalties, or fines up to 31st December 2023 going backwards, they'll get the amnesty. And maybe somebody would want to know how you would find yourself in a situation where you're accruing the interest and penalties. And you accrue interest and penalties either if you don't file your returns or if you don't file them on time. Number two is if you make your tax payments late after due dates. Or number three, if you underdeclare, you say this is what you are supposed to pay, then an audit is done later or a tax return amendment is done later, and the assessment goes higher. You'll find yourself in a terrible position. So you'll have interest and penalties. So in case you fall under those categories, you will incur interest and penalty. And the final category is where a taxpayer is a non-filer. You have not been filing your returns from the past period, and now because you have heard about the tax amnesty, you go file. Immediately you file, the system will impose on you penalties, but they will also qualify for forgiveness. That is the amnesty that we are running.
And maybe to simplify, what is the process of applying for the tax amnesty? Is filing a tax return enough, or do I need to file and pay? Do I need to make an application in writing to KRA to be able to enjoy the amnesty? Miriam.
The current tax amnesty, we have made it very simple in that if you want this amnesty, the conditions that you need to comply to or adhere to is you just need to pay the principal amount before 30th of June 2025. That is this coming Monday. By Monday, if you have any outstanding principal taxes, if you make payment for those amounts before 30th of June 2025, provided they are for periods before 31st of December 2023, you'll get amnesty. The second condition, the first one I've mentioned, is for taxpayers with principal taxes. That is, you have outstanding principal amount that needs to be paid. And for that category, you were required to apply because there was a provision for payment plan. But given that we're in the last month, you cannot get the payment plan because you only have days to pay. So what we are telling people is, don't apply anywhere. Just go to the system, pay the principal taxes, and you'll get the amnesty. The second category is the taxpayers without principal taxes to pay. And this category is taxpayers who have been filing nil return or taxpayers who have just come and filed their return late. For that category, you don't need to make any application. The only thing you are needed to do is just file the returns, and then immediately you file, you will get the amnesty. And the amnesty is executed once give you the amnesty certificate. So it will be confirmation you have gotten the amnesty. The second way you'll know you've gotten amnesty is in case you file your return and not that you have not gotten the amnesty certificate, you can raise it with your debt manager or any KRA staff, and they have a provision in the system where they'll put the PIN and execute amnesty and you'll get it. The other option you have is we are consolidated all cases that might be left out and putting in a system, then running it, and all amnesty certificate will be issued to the taxpayer. So you just need to pay the principal taxes, get amnesty, or file the returns, and you'll get amnesty.
Thank you, Miriam. And I think that brings us to a close to our spaces today. I think we have been able to address most of the pressing questions from the audience. But in case your question has not been addressed, feel free to send a reminder on the chat box, and our experts will be reaching out to you with a detailed response to that question. At this point, I will let our speakers give us their closing remarks on the need to file tax returns and assurance to taxpayers that KRA is willing and able to listen and facilitate them to conveniently file their returns. We start with Miriam, then Ruth, we go to Weekly, Esther, and we close with the patients. Miriam.
Thank you very much, Joe, for this opportunity. In conclusion, what I would urge the taxpayers to do is, given that the tax amnesty is coming to an end, that is on 30th of this month, we encourage any taxpayers who have not filed their returns to do whether nil return or payable. In case you have been under declaring, kindly come forth, declare and pay the principal. In case you have cases in court, kindly withdraw the cases and take the option of paying the principal so that you can get the interest and penalties vacated. And then finally, in case your year end was December 2023, you will get the amnesty despite the final installment falling later or balance of taxes being payable the following year. So we call all taxpayers to take advantage of this and then have a fresh start by having the interest and penalties vacated. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank the Mango Capital team, the participants, the attendees, the KRA team. This has been great. Thank you for the opportunity. For me, in conclusion, I would like to urge each and every taxpayer who is listening to us to take a minute or two, log in into your iTax system and check. We could be talking about penalties and interest and principal liabilities, but you haven't checked your system to know your status. Take time to check so that if you have any issue, I have seen that KRA is on tomorrow up to Monday, so that you can pick it up with the KRA team and resolve by Monday so that you get a waiver. Thank you once again and have a good evening.
Thank everyone for taking their time to join this discussion. And of course, to remind each and everyone that we are approaching deadline for filing our taxes for the year 2024. And that it's simple. Just take a few minutes, like 5 minutes, and file your taxes. We are available to assist you whenever you need us.
Thank you very much, Joe, for this platform. Really appreciate the opportunity to interact with the taxpayer. I would want to say that the Kenya Revenue Authority is making a lot of effort through the newly formed department called Micro and Small Taxpayer to simplify the journey for taxpayers. And we are very open to feedback, taxpayers who are on this platform, to see how we can make the experience a bit more simple for the taxpayers, because we appreciate that sometimes maybe when we come up with a system, there may be systems that are configured to serve the large taxpayer, but we have started a journey, and I want to assure you of that, Joe, to receive feedback, to see how we can simplify this. And we are hoping that even as we come to the new year, the journey will be simpler. We are coming up with simpler solutions. You've heard someone say that now you can log into iTax using your national ID. We never used to have that. You'd only log in into your platform with a PIN number, which we appreciate. Is a long number, sometimes a difficult one to remember. So now you can actually log in into iTax with your PIN number, with your ID number. We have a simplified solution on eCitizen. We are also trying to make the USSD experience even better, so that you can just use your ID number to pay your turnover tax, to pay your MRI. And this is a journey we have undertaken, Joe. We just want to assure taxpayers that we are very interested, and which is why you can see a large number of us have joined this platform, and we are happy to interact even much more. And we are available to help taxpayers be able to file their returns on time. You know, we only have Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. But I think, as Patient said, our doors are open throughout to make sure that we assist taxpayers. So it's really our joy to be on this wall, Joe, and we hope for more opportunities to just be able to interact and simplify some of the very technical terms that we use in tax law to our taxpayers. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Esther. And over to you, Patience, for the closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe and team, for putting this together, and also to thank my colleagues and the fraternity who's joined in from KRA. From our end, our closing remarks to our taxpayers, to Kenyans at large, is to, number one, tell them that we are actually committed on this journey of us stimulating economic growth. It may not feel like that right now, but we are putting in place every effort to ensure that all the support that can be accorded to our MSMEs is afforded to them, it's provided to them, and we are committed to providing that service for free. And KRA has employed very many accountants, very many corporate lawyers, very many experts as far as business access goes, and we are committed to providing that service. As well, we are looking at simplifying, just as DC Esther has said, our solutions, and providing POS solutions, payroll solutions that will help businesses have compliance a lot more easier without too much struggle. And also, to achieve this, we are looking at customized support. That's why we are also pursuing sector-specific engagements, so that we come up with tax solutions, tax conversations, and tax education that addresses sector-specific areas or questions that they may have through the partnerships that we have. And ultimately, we are looking to be more accessible to our taxpayers and more available for consultation. And lastly, we are going to be user-friendly. We are going to be more user-friendly. Kwa hivyo msiogope wa Kenya jamani. Tuko hapa kwa ajili yenu, tutawahudumia na tunawapa hii huduma bure kabisa. Kwa hivyo asanteni sana, na tungependa kuwashukuru sana kwa kujumuika nasi jioni ya leo. Asante na Mungu awabariki.
Thank you, Patience, and to all our speakers and to our audience for making time to join with us this evening, talking tax and accounting jargon. Apologies to people who are not into business, finance, accounting, tax profession. We will endeavor to simplify these discussions in the future as much as we can. And as you've heard from KRA, they are willing to listen to you, they are willing to support and facilitate you so that you are able to focus on doing business. Just one overriding comment from our audience. I think it's good to put it in towards the end is that KRA needs to come up with a standardized P9 for all the employers to use, because several people have encountered situations where their employers are providing them with P9s that do not give them all the necessary information that is required to file their 2024 income tax returns, and this is specifically for pay-as-you-earn obligations. But over and above, I believe most of our questions were adequately answered during our spaces this evening. If you have any burning question that you believe or feel has not been addressed, feel free to drop us a chat, and our experts from KRA, even from the private sector, will be reaching out to you with a comprehensive response. I believe we can bring it to a close at that, and have a good evening.
Maybe Joe,
Yes, Esther.
I will share the P9 because it is there. I'll just share it on your wall.
Thank you, Esther. Have a good evening.